I wanted to start by reading a passage from the Federal Transit Administration. Simply having a disability does not make you eligible for complimentary paratransit under the ADA. The perception of ADA complimentary paratransit as a transportation system for the disabled is common but misguided. The ADA is a civil rights law, not a social services program. In terms of transportation, this means that its primary function is to remove the barriers that prevent people with disabilities from using the existing transportation system, not to provide separate special services. Under the ADA, complimentary paratransit acts as a safety net for people with disabilities whose disabilities still prevent them, not merely makes use more difficult from using the fixed route system, even when it's fully accessible. So what are the basic parameters of paratransit? We're required to provide paratransit within a 3/4 mile corridor on either side of a fixed route. Paratransit is based upon the same days, hours of service, and route structure as a regularly scheduled fixed route. I had a para-rider call upset that we couldn't take a trip request to the Kukla ferry at 7 o'clock in the morning. I had to explain to him that the Route 6 doesn't go to the Kukla ferry until 8:05. His request for a 7 o'clock trip fell outside the parameters of the Route 6. A way to think of it is, if you can't do it on the fixed route, you can't do it on para. Agencies are not allowed to prioritize trip purpose, and due to a medical condition, the applicant must be prevented from being able to utilize the fixed route service. Am I eligible? I'm on Social Security disability. I have a disabled parking permit. I can't carry my groceries. I lost my driver's license due to a medical condition, or simply someone's age or diagnosis. None of these automatically qualify someone for paratransit service. The functional assessment. The ADA allows 21 days for me to process an application. If for whatever reason my schedule does not allow me to meet within the 21 days, they are automatically granted paratransit service until such time as I can meet with them. My goal is to meet with people between 7 and 14 days. So I'm out of the office 3 or 4 days a week meeting with applicants. My job for the assessment is to find out what physical challenges they face on a daily basis and identify what tasks they are able to perform consistently. So their rider abilities. How far can they walk to and from a bus route? Can they cross a 2 or 4 lane street if it doesn't have a controlled light or stop sign? Do they need a bus stop with a bench because they can't stand for long periods of time? Are they able to walk up a reasonable incline? Whenever I'm establishing what they're able to do, I always have to apply the reasonable person test. And the FDA identifies that as eligibility is warranted if a reasonable person with the disability in question would be deterred from making the trip. So an example of this is our Ledgewood community. Any fixed route rider who lives there is required to cross the highway to get to the northbound stop. They don't have a choice. So if I'm dealing with someone with a disability, would they be deterred from making a trip by crossing the highway? Maybe someone with a vision issue that can't see if the traffic is coming at 55 miles an hour from either direction. The Easter Seals Project Action, which is an agency that advocates for those with disabilities, recommends that we go even one step further. Ask myself, would I want my mother doing this? Would I want my grandmother to have to do this? The ADA gives us 3 categories of eligibility. They understand that people have different levels of function: conditional, unconditional, and temporary. I met with a new applicant about 2 weeks ago. She was 58 years old. She had a major fracture of her leg. They put plate and screws in it. She indicated to me that it was becoming increasingly difficult to get to SARS to do her grocery shopping. Well, that was about a half a mile away. I asked her, are you able to walk to the stop sign up at the end of the road? She says, oh yeah, I can do that. That's not a problem. That was about 800 or 900 feet. I said, do you realize the Route 10 runs right in front of your apartment complex and you only have to walk out about 110 feet, flag the bus down, and you'll be at SARS in 3 minutes? She says, yeah, but the Route 10 only runs every hour now, so it's not as convenient. The convenience of the fixed route does not play a role in eligibility for paratransit service. So I identified the rest of her conditions. She couldn't walk up moderate hills. She needed to cross an intersection at a controlled light or stop sign. She couldn't step up on a curb, so she needed curb cuts in her path of travel. Once I outlined all of these conditions, I let her know that when you go to book a trip, We're going to compare the path of travel to your destination with your conditions, and if it's within what you are capable of doing, that trip is not going to be eligible for paratransit, and we're going to expect you to take that trip on the fixed route. The key to conditional eligibility is to be consistent, to be thorough, and to be specific in what they're able to do. The first time I met with Mr. Grasco, when he came on board, he asked me what I felt was our #1 issue for improvement in our paratransit department. By far, I said it was our conditional eligibility. The reason for that was because we were not doing it. Anyone who applied for paratransit service and were deemed eligible, they had no conditions placed upon them. They booked a ride, they got the ride. I had a game plan in place that I ran by him. I said I want to start doing an assessment that outlines everything they're able to do. We should be doing it. Other agencies are doing it. The ADA expects us to do it. They don't want trips to be taken that aren't ADA eligible, because that will cause a constraint of services. It'll increase your costs. If you're doing more than you're required to do, you're going to exceed what you should be doing. So my next concern was, how do I recertify people who've been riding for years without conditions? The first gentleman I met with was down in Langley. He lived off at 3rd. I asked him what challenges he faced. In speaking with him, he said that he will walk around his apartment complex and walk into Langley just for the exercise. I said, so you can do that. I said, what other barriers do you face? He says, hills are no problem. I can stand and wait for the bus, no problem. The only other condition he had is he needed to cross the street at a controlled intersection. I pointed out, do you realize the Route 7 comes within 700 feet, which is the distance that we determined he was safely able to travel, that you could walk over there, flag the bus, and go where you needed to go. I let him know as well that any trip he tried to book that was outside his capabilities would be para-eligible. But if he could do it, he was going to need to take the fixed route. So 2.5 months later, I looked up. He has not taken a trip since I met with him. I called him. I said, hey, are you out riding the fixed route? He says, no, he hadn't done that yet. So I was concerned. I said, are you getting where you need to go? Your doctor's appointments, your grocery shopping. He said, yeah, his caregiver is taking him where he needs to go. I said, are you going to give the fixed route a chance? He says, yes, when the weather gets better. So he's made the choice to find alternate transportation rather than use the fixed route. But once the weather's better, he's going to give it a chance. The bottom line is, we are not providing a paratrip that is not eligible for this gentleman. Unconditional paratransit, those are usually my elderly riders, 80 and 90-year-olds. Their restrictions are so defined that at some point I just say, you're unconditional. You're going to take any trip that you want. Temporary is just as it sounds. It's short period of time. It can be either conditional or unconditional. The challenges we face as an agency are riders understanding that the FDA provides specific guidelines for scheduling paratransit service, and that there are some responsibilities on their part to keep the system running efficiently. The negotiation window. The FDA allows us a 1-hour negotiation in the plus travel time. So that means if someone is in Langley and they need to be in Oak Harbor at 11, we are allowed the 1-hour travel time plus the 1-hour window to get them there. The FDA understands that with that 1-hour negotiation window, that allows us the time to go pick up other people in Langley before we head north. Maybe we're going to stop in Liverpool and pick someone up as we continue north. That 1-hour window also works on the trip home. If they're done with their appointment at 12, we may not be back to pick them up until 1. We may not get them home until 2. So now they've been out of their house from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., 5 hours for a 1-hour appointment. They call and complain. Why was I gone so long? What the FDA says is that paratransit mirrors the fixed route. If a fixed route person had that same appointment in Oak Harbor, they'd have to walk to a bus stop, catch the bus, ride it out to the Bayview Park and ride, wait for the transfer to the Route 1 northbound, get off at Harbor Station, wait for the transfer of a fixed route bus, ride it as close as they could, and then walk to their destinations. I can tell you that a fixed route rider would have to leave well before 9 a.m. to make it to an 11 o'clock appointment in Oak Harbor. So what is actually happening is the para rider is getting a better trip than a fixed route rider, yet they complain anyway because they think it takes too long. Utilizing the fixed route as part of their para trip. that same rider, para-rider in Langley, may be taken out to the Bayview Park and Ride and transferred to the fixed route to head north. They'll get dropped off at Harbor Station, where a small parabus will take them the rest of the way to their destination. This allows a more efficient use of our resources. That fixed route bus is headed north anyway. We might as well put our para-rider on it. But they call and complain, I'm a para-rider. Why are you putting me on the fixed route? Our 30-minute pickup window. When a rider is given a pickup time of 11 a.m., we expect them to be ready to go at any time between 10:45 and 11:15, keeping an eye out for the bus. Our schedules are tight. We don't have time to wait for someone. The bus is allowed to wait only 5 minutes, and then they're going to have to go. So yes, we do want you ready ahead of time, keeping an eye out for the bus. We do give some riders a heads-up call. Say, for instance, their driveway is not accessible. They can't see when the bus gets there. We don't want them standing out on the road for half an hour waiting for the bus. So we'll call them and tell them, hey, the bus is going to be there in 5. We need to have you head on out to the road. Riders designated as DNLA, that's our Do Not Leave Alone riders. These are passengers that are going to the Time Together program, or they're riders with other cognitive issues. There is a safety factor involved here. We cannot leave them alone. The problem comes in when we're trying to take them home and no one is there to meet them or receive them. The operator has to call dispatch. Dispatch starts calling all the emergency numbers we have. Our choices at this point are to have the bus sit there and wait with other riders on it that are wanting to get home. Have a road support staff member go and wait with that rider until family comes home, or keep that rider on the bus while the bus continues on its schedule. None of those options are ideal for us. So trip cancellations and no-shows and how they impact our schedule. The FTA says that if a rider gives us 2 hours notice to cancel a trip, that's adequate. That's plenty of time. In reality, our manifests are set the night before. Any trip canceled the day of is going to have a negative impact on our schedule. If they can't give us 2 hours notice and the reason is beyond their control, we can't hold it against them. Maybe their wheelchair battery is dead, or their doctor rescheduled their appointment and they don't need the trip, or their personal care attendant can't travel with them. We cannot hold that against them. And when I say hold it against them, I mean towards any possible suspension for excessive late cancels or no-shows. Our prior policy was 3 late cancels or no-shows in a month and you could be suspended from service. The FDA says no, we don't want that. We don't want the average rider to be suspended. So if the average rider is doing that 3 times a month, we can't take action until someone does it 9 times a month. So here's a visual for you of what this does to our schedule. This is one operator's manifest. There were 17 riders scheduled that day, 7 cancellations. All of the dark blue is downtime for that operator because of a cancellation. So when you see our small parabuses sitting in a parking lot somewhere with the engines off, chances are that operator had cancellations and now they're just waiting for their next pickup. I can tell you that first pickup was a dialysis patient down in Langley. She didn't give us enough time to cancel that trip. The operator came in, clocked in, and had to sit and wait for 35 minutes before their first pickup. Nothing we can do about it. All of these cancellations fell within the guidelines of the FTA that were all acceptable. We couldn't pursue action against any of these. And this is not a hard example to find. It happens every day. So the stats for Paratransit, in 2014, we had 70,331 paratrips. We're averaging about 228 per day. Our average trip per hour is 2.3. And understand that 2.2 to 2.5 is a typical range for a higher density area, urban or suburban. So the fact that as a rural agency we're getting that number is excellent. 10 to 12 parabuses are on the road every day. We had 184 new applications received in 2014. 642 trip cancellations for the month of March alone, and 100 no-shows for March. Now, I should explain too that if someone has 3 destinations scheduled in a day and we go to pick them up and they're not there, we mark them as a no-show. The FTA does not allow us to cancel the rest of their trips that day. We have to keep them on the schedule until we get confirmation from that rider that they don't need that trip. So we're faced with possibly 2 more cancellations for that rider that day, and there's nothing that we can do about it. Where is Paratransit going? Well, here's our statistics for the last 8 years. We have almost doubled our ridership from '07 to 2014. The cancellation percentage for that time period increase has only gone up slightly, 8.6 to 9%. Our no-shows have gone up out of this world, 1.9%. Now understand too, we have an operator that arrived at someone's home to pick them up and found a note taped to the door. Went out to lunch with friends, I don't need my ride. Why they didn't pick up the phone and call us and tell us that the bus didn't need to spend the time and money to drive there, I don't know. But again, we can't take action against that person unless they've no-showed or canceled 9 times in a month. So that's my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Absolutely.
Great.
How about some lights, please?
So I'll work, well, starting with the maybe more of a comment, or no, it's a question. So when you're talking about cancellations, and then the question was why did that individual call to cancel versus leaving a note on the door, what type of rider education and outreach do we do to ensure that the consumers of this service understand the implications of their actions and how it affects the whole system?
The initial interview that I meet with them, I explain to them the guidelines for the service, that they are required to give us 2 hours notice to cancel. I let them know that if they don't need the trip, the more time they give us, the better. They understand what the policy is. It's in our guidebook, and I also go over it with them. Every time someone does a late cancel or no-show, I'm required to send them a letter. The letter has to state what trip they missed. It states our policy. It lets them know that if it happens a certain amount of time in a month, they do run the risk of a suspension. So, I mean, the information is out there given to them. I think that our policy doesn't have a lot of bite to it because it has to happen 3 times more than the average rider before we can take action.
And then on the slide before that one, the paratransit statistics. So I have a question, but I'm not sure how to ask it. So 2.3 average trips per hour, and then we run 10 to 12 parabuses used daily. Somehow I think I need to know in those like higher density urban areas how many buses they're using